In today's world, not everyone who wins gets a trophy. Hey, back in my day, if I won a trophy, a year later, somewhere in a cupboard, I would find it as it had to be returned to be engraved with someone else's name on it. Hello, I'm Mike Bain from Christian Voice New Zealand, and hey, thanks for joining me as I take a look at today's culture through the lens of the Bible. And today, particularly, I want to look at how we can find God's glory in a world obsessed with winning. I'm going to start by admitting I'm a winner. I love winning. I love winners. Does that make me a bad person? No. It just means that when I or others accomplish a goal successfully, whether it be in sport, business or life, it gives us a sense of accomplishment. Now go back to Genesis 1, when God created the heavens and the earth, and by the end of day 2, in verse 10, what do we read? It says, God said, it was good. By the time he got to the end of the 6th day and he created everything, including man and woman, in verse 31 we read that God saw that all he had made and it was very good. And how would we say it today? Well, I stepped back, looked at it all and thought, nailed it. Well, without a doubt, the creation of the earth, the heavens and man were probably relatively simple, but to be honest, you have to take your hat off to him for when he created the complexity of woman. But let's pause and imagine the divine boardroom in heaven. Angels, seraphim, cherubs, and maybe even some other heavenly cheerleaders, all nodding in awe. God had accomplished something impressive. There's nothing wrong with celebrating that. Well, God's response to his creation, it was good, it was very good, models a healthy expression of satisfaction. It explores the divine precedent for celebrating achievement with righteousness. Now, speaking about impressive, I want you to think back to this year's Super Rugby game between the Chiefs and Moana Pacific. The game was the rugby dream, with the underdogs Moana Pacifica only a week before had humbled the Blues and every other New Zealand side in the competition except the Chiefs. Well, 80 minutes later, after the game was started, Moana Pacific were devastated. They were pounded into submission at the hands of the Chiefs, who absolutely thrashed them in a display of near-perfect rugby. Now, what came out of that exchange was a sense of joy for Chiefs fans, and although they had no title, no trophy, but they did have bragging rights as being top of the competition and as the side to beat. If you like, Chiefs fans were given a social license to boast until the next game. That old cowbell in our house was ringing like Christmas. Why? Because accomplishment feels good, and it should. Now, if you're a parent, you know the feeling. First steps, first tooth, well, maybe not that one, but first words. We cheer, we beam, we share. Church people love to brag. Have you noticed, especially when in company of others, you know our minister is really lovely. Our congregation is huge, and our worship band is, well, better than Hillsong. You're right. I always love this one. The coffee's great. But let me give you a true example of what I'm saying. True story. There was this vintage bloke from the depths of down country, think rural charm meets spiritual flex, who'd swoop in like a revival tent on wheels. Now, he'd kick off with an all-hallows sermon about how stunningly exceptional his church was, the divine exploits they were apparently rolling out weekly, and of course, his pastor, who may or may not have moonlighted as the fourth member of the Trinity. But anyway, there, with all the tact of a spotlight at the humility convention, he'd dropped the question, so what does your church do? And before I could formulate a syllable, poof, he'd vanished in a holy haze of self-satisfaction. Picture painted? Well, frame it. Well, we all love to brag about something, and you know what? It's what we do when we have a sense of achievement. We want to share it with others. Ah, yes, the sacred relics of Molyn's success trophies, diplomas, and that dusty folder of certificates that we drag out when someone questions our worth. It's like a shrine to our accomplishments, complete with laminate and embossed gold. And as a nation, we're practically programmed to puff up with their pride every time Lisa Carrington even glances at a kayak. If Lydia Ko has a rough day, we grieve like we've lost a national treasure, but only for a minute until someone else wins something shiny. Hey, let's be honest, we don't just like winners, we canonise them. I'm no different, and neither are you. So let's all pretend it's patriotism and not just tribal bragging rights in a snazzy dinner suit. Well, you knew this was coming, and here it is. But, let's call it what it is. Pride. Pride in what we're part of, in who we're becoming. But here's the catch. Pride has a shadow. Bragging is just a slick synonym for boasting. And the Bible has thoughts on that. Kind of brings that good euphoric feeling back to earth, doesn't it? Paul warned Timothy that in the last days people would be boastful, lovers of themselves, having a form of godliness, but denying its power. Now, that's not a compliment, that's a red flag. God himself, through Jeremiah, sets the record straight. But let the one who boast about this, that they have the understanding to know me, that I am the Lord who exercises kindness, justice and righteousness on earth. For in these I delight, declares the Lord. Now, in the King James Version, I can see some of you salivating about that. It says, but let him that glorifieth glory in this, that he understandeth and knoweth me, that I am the Lord, which exercise loving kindness, judgment, and righteousness in earth. For all these things I delight, saith the Lord. In other words, if you're going to boast, make it about something eternal. Well, here's the difference. So if you put boasting and bragging together, let's go through it. And if you were using tone, for example, it can be neutral or even positive. Its usage can often be used when someone proudly shares a real achievement. An example, maybe she boasted about a team's success in the tournament. The connotation may imply pride, but not necessarily arrogance. But when you're bragging, your tone is usually negative or arrogant. Usage, sometimes excessive or self-centered, and you talk about your accomplishments. An example, he kept bragging about how much money he made. A connotation may be often seen as annoying or boastful in a bad way. Think of it this way. Boasting might be what you do even when you're proud of your kid winning a medal. Bragging is what you do when you won the medal, and you won't stop banging on about it, telling everybody, even the cat. It's just something to think about as we make our way as God's people in this secular world. Stop and listen to others as they speak about their accomplishments. Are they boasting, bragging, or just puffing up their own egos, giving themselves that informal prize which says, hey, we are lovers of ourselves? But importantly, as a Christian, as a child of God, we should in turn listen and hear what we are saying to others. Being proud of our achievement, having pride in our family and our country, well, they're all important, but be careful not to become like those that Paul warned about. He said, as Christians, we're called to be salt and light, not ego and spotlight. So let's celebrate wins, yeah, but let's do it humbly. Reflect on what really matters. Now, I want to finish on something I said at the start. I like winning. And I love being around people who set goals, pursue them relentlessly, and get that satisfying feeling when it all pays off. Does that make me arrogant? Absolutely not. It means I value hard work, discipline, and achievement. Over the years, I've won numerous times, and all my trophies have been given back. All my business awards, well, they're somewhere in the garage collecting dust. They all mean nothing to me today. But for me, the greatest prize isn't a trophy, an award, or a headline. It's living among people I love, my wife, my kids, my grandkids, and walking daily in the love of God. Now that's what I boast about, and I'll never apologise for that. Thanks again for being with me. Don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter at thenewzealand.com. We love your prayers, your feedback, and your voice in this journey. Hey, I'll leave you with this thought from Psalm 119. May your unfailing love be my comfort according to your promise to your servant. Let your compassion come to me that I may live, for your law is my delight. Until next time.